Sometimes life breaks you in ways you never expect. Sometimes everything you've built, everything you've worked for, disappears in a single day. It feels like the end, but what if losing everything was actually the moment that saved your life? Today, I want to share a story about a man who fell to the absolute bottom, and the one choice that helped him rise again, stronger than he ever imagined. Meet Daniel. He was a simple, hard-working man in his mid-30s. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, he was just a regular guy, trying to build a small, meaningful life for himself. For years, Daniel saved every single penny he earned from his long, grueling shifts at a local factory. Every coin, every extra hour, every sacrifice he made was poured into one single dream: to open his own small workshop where he could repair furniture. You see, Daniel loved working with his hands. He felt alive when he shaped wood, fixed broken things, and breathed new life into old, forgotten pieces. It was his passion, his calling. After nearly 10 years of relentless saving, he finally did it. His workshop opened. It wasn't big. It wasn't shiny or modern, but it was his. Every morning, he unlocked the doors before the sun came up. And every night, he was the last one to leave, long after everyone else had gone home. Slowly, very slowly, his business started to grow. People in the neighborhood loved him. They trusted his craftsmanship. They brought him their wobbly tables, their broken chairs, their old doors, anything that needed a skilled hand. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt a deep sense of pride. He felt like he was building something real, something that mattered. But life, as we all know, doesn't always move in a straight line. One night, Daniel went home as usual. He was tired, but happy. He made a cup of tea, sat down in his favorite chair, and smiled, reflecting on everything he had achieved. His dream was finally real, but at 3 a.m., a frantic knock shattered his peace. It was his neighbor, screaming, "Daniel! Your workshop, come fast!" Daniel ran outside, barefoot, confused, his heart pounding with fear. When he turned the corner, he froze. His workshop, his dream, his entire life's work, was engulfed in flames. The fire spread with terrifying speed. He watched in horror as the roof collapsed, his precious tools melted. The furniture he was so carefully restoring turned to ash. Daniel stood there, completely helpless, feeling his heart drop into the pit of his stomach. He felt weak, he felt empty. By sunrise, everything he had built was gone. 10 years of saving, 3 years of building, all destroyed in one night of fire. Daniel had lost everything, and for the first time in many, many years, he felt utterly and completely defeated. The days that followed were a blur of grief. Daniel stopped going outside. He just sat in his small apartment, staring at the floor, lost in a sea of despair. He had no job, no workshop, no tools, and no money to even think about starting again. Some people tried to offer advice, saying things like, "Maybe it's a sign to quit," or "Maybe this dream just wasn't for you. Just look for another job." But their words, meant to help, only deepened his pain. Daniel felt completely lost. He felt like he had failed at life, failed himself. One evening, he found himself drawn back to the site of his burned-out workshop. The acrid smell of smoke still hung heavy in the air. He walked through the ashes, the remnants of his dream crunching under his feet. He picked up a charred piece of wood. And he just broke down. He cried like a child. He wasn't crying just for the lost building. He was crying for the years he fought for, the hope he had nurtured, the future he had lost. As he sat there, surrounded by the ruins of his life, something small caught his eye. A single tool, a metal chisel. It was blackened by smoke and soot, but it hadn't been destroyed. Daniel picked it up. He held its familiar weight in his hand. And in that quiet moment of despair, something inside him shifted. At that moment, Daniel understood something profound. The fire had taken away his workshop, but it hadn't taken away his hands. It hadn't taken away his skills. It hadn't taken away his heart. He realized he still had something incredibly powerful, the choice to stand up again. He had two options. He could stay here, broken among the ashes, or he could start again, from nothing. Daniel looked at the burnt chisel and whispered to himself, "Maybe I lost everything. But I haven't lost myself." That night, he made one simple, powerful decision. He would rise again. Daniel started small, incredibly small. He borrowed a sturdy table from a neighbor. He borrowed a hammer from a friend. He used the very last of his money to buy a small box of nails. He set up a tiny repair corner on the sidewalk right outside his apartment building. At first, people didn't take him seriously. A workshop in the street, a man working with borrowed tools. It seemed impossible, but Daniel kept going. Day after day, piece by piece. He worked under the hot sun. He worked in the pouring rain. Sometimes he worked until midnight, guided only by a single street lamp. And slowly, people started to return. It began with a trickle. "Daniel, can you fix this chair for me?" "Daniel, I have an old drawer that's falling apart, can you repair it?" "Daniel, I trust your hands." Word began to spread again, and this time, it spread faster. People were moved by his resilience, by his refusal to give up. Within a few months, Daniel had saved enough money to rent a small storage room. Then he bought a few used tools. Then he hired a young assistant, a kid from the neighborhood who believed in his mission. 1 year later, Daniel reopened his workshop. It was bigger than the first one. It was better. It was stronger. People in the town called it a miracle. "You're so lucky," they'd say. But Daniel knew the truth. It wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was the result of one single choice he made in his darkest hour, the choice not to stay down. One day, a reporter came to his new workshop to write a story about him. He asked, "How did you do it? How did you rebuild everything after losing it all?" Daniel smiled. He reached into a special case and pulled out the burnt chisel he had saved from the fire. He handed it to the reporter and said, "This is my reminder. Life can burn down my shop, but it can't burn my will." "I didn't rebuild my workshop first. I rebuilt myself." The reporter wrote his story, and it touched thousands of people. Daniel became an inspiration in his town. Not because he was successful, but because he refused to quit. Daniel's story teaches us something incredibly powerful. You might lose things in life, big things, but you must never, ever lose yourself. Dreams can burn, money can disappear, plans can fail, people can leave. But as long as you have the will to stand up, a new path will always appear. The fire didn't end Daniel's life, it started a new one. So if you're going through a hard time right now, if you feel like everything is falling apart around you, remember this story. Remember Daniel, you haven't failed. You are being prepared, and sometimes losing everything is what helps you rise again stronger than ever before. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content like this. Take care, and never forget the strength you hold inside.